We have some last minute injury news that we have to go through and update the rankings with. I already did this on the side. I'll show you what they are. But first, let's dive into the news. Alvin Kamara not expected to be traded. You'll see with the Kamara projections, they're actually very low. So if Kamara's not going to get traded and the usage is trending in the wrong direction, of course, who knows how true this really is? I mean, we could see this as a smokescreen and all of a sudden Kamara does get dealt next week. But it's not looking great for Alvin Kamara at the moment. Like, you should be relatively concerned here. Jalen Coker ruled out for week 6. So Coker not going to be back. Realistically, you weren't playing him anyway. I'll say Xavier Legette maybe helps me in some underdog best ball teams, but you're never starting Legette. You're not starting anybody here but Dowdle and Tet. Deebo Samuel and Chris Rodriguez listed as questionable for Monday. Chris Rodriguez did miss practice on Friday. So realistically, I had to move Ja'Cory Crosskey-Merritt up our rankings a considerable amount, especially as we look at what the projections are. And the projections absolutely love Bill Crosskey-Merritt this week. Kyle Monangai not listed on the injury report. This does negatively impact DeAndre Swift. Loveland questionable for Monday. Doesn't matter. Kincaid, Curtis Samuel. I think Kincaid's going to play. Don't worry. I'm going through and looking at our next thing. Darnell Mooney listed out for Monday. So this is going to make Kyle Pitts viable. Not only is this going to make Kyle Pitts viable, but also you're going to be looking at London getting a slight bump up, and you are starting him anyway. Terry McLaurin ruled out for Monday, which is going to make Deebo Samuel, assuming that he plays, an absolute must-start option. Going through and looking at Jamar Chase, he popped up with an illness on the injury report yesterday, but it looks like he's going to be good to go. You will have Mac Jones starting in San Francisco. You will not have Ricky Pearsall. We don't know about Jawan Jennings just yet. Yeah, but Pearsall's going to be out. Purdy obviously is out. Brock Bowers is out, which makes Jacoby Myers project a little bit better than he otherwise would. Lamar Jackson listed as out. CeeDee Lamb listed as out. Miles Sanders placed on the season-ending IR. So actually in my own league, we saw Jaden Blue go off the waiver wire yesterday. And I'll say if you're in a deeper format, Jaden Blue is definitely appealing now. But I think we can go through and I can show you the projections and show you the updated rankings. Now, I want to just explain where these projections are coming from 1 second. And the reason why I think that these projections are worthwhile looking at is because Underdog actually has something at stake. I can come through and I can make my own rankings on flockfantasy.com. And if I'm wrong, if I had Igbuka too low, then y'all can clown on me in the comment section. But realistically, you can't go, Mason, hey, I'll wager $1,000 that Igbuka is going to be higher in your rankings. On Underdog, you can actually go and take these higher lowers. So these projections are actually going to be very important, where if you see Garrett Wilson, who's currently higher lower 11.25 fantasy points, according to Underdog, and you think, oh, that's way too low, I'm going to go take the higher then they can lose some money. So you see Tet at 12.15 higher lower fantasy points. You see Javonte Williams currently higher lower 16.25. So if you're looking at projections like this, they'd clearly scream, oh, you play Javonte Williams over Garrett Wilson. But let's go ahead. Let's dive into all the projections. So what I decided to do, and this is what we do every Saturday, is I did the research. I looked at the projections for every running back, and I ranked them based off their projections on Underdog. So you can actually see this with this being the tier of running backs that are absolute must-start names regardless of your team and regardless of matchup. You have McCaffrey, higher lower, 115.5 total yards as the RB1. Bijan, higher lower, 110.5. Taylor, higher lower, 109.5. Gibbs, 101. Brees, 100. Jacobs, 99. Ginty, 96. Javonte, 95. Dowdle, 95. Achane, 94. James Cook, 91. Quinshon Judkins, 92. Kyron Williams, 90. Rashad White, 89. Now, obviously, these are not my actual rankings. If you want to see my actual rankings, just head over to the site. You can just pull them up whenever you want. You'll see that I have players like Devon Achane higher in these actual rankings, because I know Achane, maybe his yardage total is not going to be as high as what you have with Ashton Jeanty, but he's going to catch the ball a hell of a lot more. We can say we're going to have James Cook higher in our rankings because while maybe he's not going to see as many yards as Ashton Jeanty in a projection, he's going to be a lot more likely to score that touchdown than Jeanty will. So again, these projections aren't everything, but it's a very good baseline. And the main thing that I want to be pointing out here is they still have Rico Dowdle and Rachaad White, the exact same thing that they did last week, as must start names. For the love of God, if you have either one of those running backs and they're on your bench, please get them inside your starting lineup. Now, let me pull up the next tier of guys that are interesting starts, but you don't have to start them. And it's going to take me just 1 second, so let me stall, and I'll remind y'all, of course, if you think that these projections are garbage on Underdog, if you think that you're a genius and you can be more accurate, then you can find the link to Underdog Fantasy in the description, in the comment section, in the live chat. And right now, Underdog is actually so confident that they know more ball than you do. You will actually get the best promo that Underdog has done in the 5 years I've been working with them. If you sign up with code FLOCK, you will get $100 added to your account after you play your first 5. And on top of that, you will get an additional free promo of of Cam Ward, higher, lower, half a total yard. Now, why are they doing Cam Ward? God knows why. I would never pick Cam Ward as the gimme, but regardless, code FLOCK will give you both of these. And at the same time, you'll actually get free questions that you can ask in the live streams that I'm streaming every single day until Christmas. But let me pull up our next tier. Again, this will be the tier of guys that you don't absolutely have to start, but you probably have in your lineup anyway. This is going to be led off with Ja'Cory Crosskey-Merritt, who is a running back that I did have to move up my rankings with the Chris Rodriguez injury, with the great matchup against the Chicago Bears, where Ja'Cory Crosskey-Merritt's higher, lower, 83.5 total yards. Then you have Derrick Henry, 77, Etienne, 75, Dobbins, 71, Michael Carter, 71, Swift, 69, Chase Brown, 69, Jalen Warren, 69, Tony Pollard, 69, and Kenneth Walker, 67. Now, let me go ahead and just show you that tier of running backs in my rankings. Obviously, I don't have that the same one for one. You'll see a player that was not in that list of projections that you actually have Underdog much lower on than my rankings is Alvin Kamara. So this is super interesting to see in the projections. And this goes to show that Kamara with this ankle may be legitimately concerning here. If they're not going to trade this dude and they're going to let his usage continue to slide backwards, like the biggest takeaway that I want you to have in this video in terms of like your starting lineup this week is Alvin Kamara is somebody you can put on your bench. Like he currently projects to have fewer total yards than Ramondre Stevenson. He's in the tier of Ramondre, Montgomery, Henderson, Charbonnet, Harvey, Haskins, and Gainwell. And maybe you say, oh, okay, well, this is ludicrous. Alvin Kamara is so much better than that. But then you go ahead and you pull it up, and Alvin Kamara over the past 3 weeks has scored 6.6, 11.2, and 9.5 fantasy points. Alvin Kamara saw a season low 27% of his team's carries this past week, according to flockfantasy.com. And at the same time, if you go through and you look at his career averages, you are seeing that the 51% of his team's carries is the lowest mark that we've had since 2020. But usually, like back in 2020, Alvin Kamara was getting there with the receiving, where we go back to that season and he had 22.5% of his team's target share. But according to flockfantasy.com, he only had 12.2% so far this season. So the usage is trending in the wrong direction. The projections hate him. So if you had Alvin Kamara and he looks like he's not going to get traded, like realistically, Kamara needs to fall down your rankings for this week, while at the same time, he needs to fall down my rest of season ranks. And then beyond this, you have the tier of the undesirables, the guys that you would not be interested in starting under really any circumstance, unless you are just desperate with injuries and bye weeks. You have Pacheco, Kareem Hunt projecting both at higher, lower 41.5 total yards. Vidal, 38.5. Miller, 34.5. Algier, 33. Justice Hill, 27. And Tajee Spears, 27 as well. So one thing that I do want to point out is they have Haskins, higher, lower 48.5 total yards. And they have Vidal, higher, lower 41.5. So realistically, as we go through and look at this, you can say that you are in a spot where Vidal is not as appealing as Hassan Haskins, which is what I said in the waiver wire video. I ranked Hassan Haskins over Vidal. He was my call in that backfield, and it looks like the projections agree with that statement as well. Now let's move over to wide receiver, and let's look at the must-start wide receiver in the projections. This will be Puka Nacua, Jackson Smith-Njigba, Egbuka. Egbuka currently projects to be the third best wide receiver in receiving yards this week. And this goes with the Chris Godwin injury. Godwin's missing this week. It looks like this may be a multi-week injury for Godwin. So I moved up Egbuka from wide receiver 12 in our rest of season rankings, which was way too low, up to, I want to say that he's like wide receiver 5 in my rest of season rankings at this point. Then we have Teteroa McMillan, London, Debo, Pickens, Waddle, Worthy, Adams, Rome, and Jamar Chase. All these wide receivers are guys that you have to start regardless of your format, regardless of your setup. You want them in your lineup. The only name that will be interesting to point out from this list will be Debo Samuel, and that's because he plays on Monday and he's currently listed as questionable. So we are going to have to go through. We're going to have to monitor that situation going into Sunday, which obviously I'm going to be live streaming later tonight, answering all your questions. I'll be live streaming tomorrow morning, including during the game, answering questions. So if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. I'd love to see you out in those live streams. I'm going to be answering a ton of free questions as well, since there's a game early tomorrow morning that we're going to be live streaming during. Usually most people don't come out to the Sunday morning stream because they only watch the game and they don't stop by the live stream. So you're a lot more likely actually tomorrow morning to get your question answered than usual. And then I guess the other thing that's worth pointing out is Jalen Waddle is higher, lower 68.5 total yards. He projects to have more yards than Jamar Chase this week. So like realistically, you just absolutely have to jam in Waddle. And you can see that with like our A tier, B tier wide receivers. These are guys that you have to play. Now going over to the range of exciting starts. And if you're in a deeper league like mine, you would for sure put these guys in, but they don't give you a high floor. The thing that's exciting about the S tier, A tier, and B tier wide receivers is they all have crazy high ceilings and they give you a decent floor as well. The next tier of options, their floor is going to be low, but their ceilings are fine. Like we have Stephon Diggs, currently higher, lower 64.5 total yards, which I feel great about. I wanted to be a little bit hesitant ranking Stephon Diggs with aggression. He's the wide receiver, at least one on my team, according to these projections. I kind of figured he was still the wide receiver 2 behind DK Metcalf on my personal team. But then you have Brian Thomas, Sutton, Olave, Metcalf, Myers, Wilson, the big Q, and then Ladd McConkey. I don't know why the projections are so low on Garrett Wilson this week. You'll see that Garrett Wilson is for sure higher in my personal rankings than where the projections have him for whatever reason. I don't know why they have him here like lower than a Brian Thomas with projected yards at higher, lower 55.5. Realistically, you look at Garrett Wilson so far this year, he has almost 33% of his team's target share. He's averaging 76 receiving yards per game. He's had at least 50 receiving yards in every contest, and he's gone higher than 55.5 in 4 out of 5. So again, I don't agree with all these projections one for one. I'm going to call my shots in some instances, and maybe Garrett Wilson is one of those where we can say like, hey, maybe if you were interested in one of these picks, either Garrett Wilson to score a touchdown, Garrett Wilson at 55.5 receiving yards, or Garrett Wilson to go higher than 11.25 fantasy points is interesting. But I would generally lean on the side of Underdog knows what they're doing with these. So maybe this has to do with the fact that this is a Europe game. Maybe this has to do with the fact that just the passing volume and the overall offense projects poorly. Now let's move over to our next couple tiers. These will be, let's first talk about this tier above. I'm including them both in the screenshots, but Harrison, Keenan, Flowers, Pittman, Shakir, and Kendrick Bourne are like names you can put in your flex spot and feel decent about, right? Am I going to put Michael Pittman Jr. in my flex and go like, oh, I'm crushing my league mate. And realistically, the target volume isn't necessarily there. He's living a hot on receiving touchdowns up until this point. I'm going to feel good. Don't get me wrong. I'm not stressing about having Michael Pittman Jr. in my flex, but I'm not going to be as excited about it as if I were able to put DK Metcalf there, at least for me personally. And then this bottom tier of the Ridley, Shaheed, Kupp, J-Mo, T. Higgins, Romeo Doubs, Matthew Golden, Trey Tucker, Jerry Jeudy, Hollywood Brown. These are players that I would avoid if possible. Now, again, my personal rankings, I'm going to be a little bit different. I have Michael Pittman Jr. higher than where the projections have in my rankings. Like I have Pittman higher than like Ladd McConkey in my own ranks. Going through and looking at Jameson Williams, I have him higher in my rankings as well because from a median projection perspective, he's always going to project poorly because the floor is just so damn low. But we have seen in the past the ceiling get there, like 121 receiving yards in the receiving touchdown, 124 receiving yards in the receiving touchdown, 143 receiving yards in the receiving touchdown. So I'm not the biggest Jameson Williams guy in the world, but I would want to say like the projections are always going to be lower on him than where I'm actually going to rank him just because, again, while you are going to get a lot of these absolute garbage performances, every once in a while you'll have the 100 receiving yards and the receiving touchdown game. That wide receivers in the range of like Cooper Kupp, I don't really see the ceiling with at this point of their careers. But I think that should be it. I will be live streaming again tomorrow morning to continue to answer as many questions as I possibly can. And at the same time, I will be live streaming tonight. So just make sure you subscribe if you haven't already. If you wanted to go like, hey, Mason, I know ball, I know better than the projections do, by all means, head over to Underdog Fantasy. Underdog is available in almost every single state. They're doing the best new user offer that I have seen in the 5 years that I've been working with them. They've been the only sponsor of this channel for 5 years. And that's after you play your first $5 with promo code FLOCK. You are going to get $100 added to your account. And on top of that, you'll actually get a free gimme pick, which for this weekend is going to be the Cam Ward higher lower half a total yard. Don't ask me why they picked Cam Ward, but that's who they ran with. And again, you can find that link to Underdog Fantasy in the description, comment section, live chat, and it will also get you guaranteed free questions for the live streams that we're doing every single day until Christmas. Like I am not going to miss a single day streaming again. It was my birthday yesterday and we still fired up the stream and answered as many of those questions for y'all as possible. But I really appreciate you. I really hope I was able to help you out in some way with this. And I really hope I get to see you out in the live stream tomorrow or later tonight.